With that sort of brief introduction, we'll just sort of lead into the first issue or the first theme. And that theme relates to the idea of a school here in Paqtnkek. It is an item that we discussed at a council level on various occasions. We involved people from MK, John Jerome Paul, Eleanor Bernard, Loretta Welsh. There have been a number of discussions related to school, and certainly it's an issue that we thought is important enough to bring to you, the community members, to get your thoughts, views, and opinions on whether or not you think a school is a good thing for the community. Again, what we're looking for is, the positive, the negative that you think with respect to a school. So, if you have any questions or things you want to bring up, certainly by all means do so. You can either do so through writing your questions down and providing them to somebody that could bring them forward to us. There is also a mic there as well to hear questions directly from people. As you may know, my voice isn't the best. I'm getting over some kind of a cold, so please bear with me. So with that, we'll just start into the first issue of a school, and obviously with each of these themes there are various leads for each. So as it relates to education, we have Tanya that will be speaking to that issue. With that brief introduction, I'll just hand it over to Tanya to sort of give you guys some further insights on some of the latest discussions that have been taking place with respect to a school and where we seek to go in the future related to that.
I'd like to welcome you all here for our community session. And as PJ had stated that, him and council were in discussion about a school, and we needed a consensus from the community. So what we're doing, what we did, in order to find out what our community wants, the feasible study has to be done. And a BCR was signed, and it got approved for $60,000 to have this study done. It will have to do with the demographics of what we want. Like, it's not what we want, it's what you guys want as a community. There's different charts that you'll see in the book, like the floor allowance and what's the floor allowance for each, like if we want a P to 3, P to 6, P to 12. And you'll notice in the booklet too about the new steps to get a school.
Did you get one of these?
Like how that all students from K6 will be attending school. All parents have to agree. No tuition will be paid to the province for any students that go outside of the community. Like, I'm not going to read it for you, but it's just like some things that you should go over. Why we're proceeding with this is because MK is under negotiations for their 5-year capital plan. And in order, if we wanted to school, we need to do that feasible study. That way we can be on board to get money for a school. And like you'll see another chart in the you'll see another chart in there about the capital plan. And when you see our nominal roll rates and how it, like for the past 2 years, it would be roughly approximately 60 students if it was K to 6. You'll also see the difference in budgets. If if we had a school and what we get now. I just wanted to provide all that information so you guys can go over it. We'll get this feasible study done, and after that feasible study's done, then we'll have another community session, and it'll be kind of like a vote. But anyway, Chief and Council, and we have our own education meeting that consists of myself, Trina, the First Nation support worker down to school. We got Sharon, Prosper, preschool, daycare, Starlene Pictou, Jacqueline Sullivan, Janice Goff, the principal down to school. And we did a little meeting amongst each other, and we felt it was good for all of you guys to know, like, that's why we included everything in this booklet, like the breakdowns of like the budget, how it would look, the nominal role, stuff like that. And I'm going to hand it over to PJ now, because he'll talk more about the feasible study and stuff. But we want you as a community, if you have any questions after PJ gives his description on the study and stuff, if you can come up and just ask away, and we hope we can answer your questions. And if there's any youth in the building, we would want to hear from you as well.
Thanks, Tanya. As Tanya mentioned earlier, there is a process that is undertaken when people are trying to address the question of whether a school, what type of school is sort of contemplated within the community to meet their specific needs. And that process is called a feasibility study. And what a feasibility study is, it's a planning tool that is undertaken by a consultant. In some instances, it is a government department like Public Works, but there are other consultants that undertake feasibility studies. And what it seeks to do is to, it looks at the demographics. In other words, it looks at our population growth. It looks at the number of students, not only today, but into the future, and it takes that into account in terms of floor space. Another thing that the feasibility study does, it starts looking at potential areas for a school. So throughout the community, it would look at potential site locations for a school, where seems to be the best sort of sense to construct a school. And basically, the other component of it seeks to sort of give an indication as to the type of school, meaning, are we talking about a school that is sort of from K to 6 or K to 12, things like that, the size of the school, because obviously the bigger the school, the more land that is needed for the school to take place. So there is a consultant that helps coordinate all of that. We've looked at other feasibility studies that were conducted for Wagoma and Indian Brook, and it's quite helpful to see how the planning process works. A big component also of that feasibility study is having communications, enhanced communications within the community. So those communications usually take place through a community planning committee. These are individuals who are volunteer to participate in gathering information, providing feedback to people who are looking to get people's views about the school, and basically rolling that, helping to roll that up into a report. So in the future, we'll be looking for people to help us out in that regard, to give us their time and hopefully their commitment into allowing this sort of feasibility study to really reflect what the community wants as it relates to a school, things of that nature. Obviously, during this process as well, we'll get indications from people on whether or not they don't want a school as well. So this community discussion is sort of part of the dialogue on getting people's general thoughts, views, opinions, experiences, things of that nature on whether or not you think a school is a good thing for the Paqtnkek community. As mentioned, we have various people over there that are looking to take concerns or issues, things of that nature. So by all means, we're just looking to hear what you all think about this. I'm looking at the other council if they want to add something before we put this to the floor and get people to provide their questions and comments and things of that nature.
Great. No, I was just looking for feedback really from community, whether we should move ahead or not. It's certainly a great opportunity for people to engage in careers and teaching and other positions within a school. But first and foremost, I guess it's just to get your opinions as to do we move ahead with this and, go ahead with the feasibility study and see what comes of that. But, ultimately the design and what happens in the school is something that is community driven. That's all.
One of the things I wanted to add, and this is just the way the practice is when other communities undertake this exercise, is there is an expectation that the costs associated with maintaining the school currently, that costs will fall upon the band. In other words, MK, or what is not provided by MK for a school on a year-to-year basis, is the O&M. So that amount would be on the band to provide that cost on a year-to-year basis. Where we would get that cost is probably from own source revenue. So it's sort of one of those things to think about as we're thinking about a school. Just a bit about the timeline associated with the school. MK is currently entering into negotiations with government, and they have a provision, they have a 5-year agreement, and that agreement provides that in the final 2 years of their agreement, they begin their negotiations, which makes a lot of sense. So they start discussing capital costs that they would require to maintain schools, to build schools, to upgrade schools, things of that nature. So as part of those negotiations, they would need clarity from ourselves, from Paqtnkek, if that commitment is there for us to proceed with the school. So some of you might be thinking about, well, when can this potentially happen if the community is open for a school? And what it seems to be is that the negotiations are starting now, so 2 years into the end of the existing agreement, and then after the 2 years would be the 5-year agreement would begin. So technically we're probably looking at a window between 3 to 7 years, where if a school is the decision of the community generally, that a school would be built on the Paqtnkek community. So it's nothing that is going to take place like tomorrow. There's a lot of negotiations, there's a lot of planning, there's a lot of work associated with something like this. And then the question is it really worth it? Is it really worth having a school in our community? Is it really worth the effort to really have more of a say regarding the education of our youth and things of that nature? When you think about a school, what other things do you think about in terms of how it's built, what services it should provide, things of that nature? So again, this is just an opportunity to just get your thoughts, views, and opinions, and let us know what you think about this, this idea of having a school in Paqtnkek. So with that, we'll just open it up to the floor for any questions or comments that people have. I mean, we may not know all the answers, and certainly we were anticipating MK to provide the finer details that people might have, but for the mix-up that existed. But, you know, we had a number of meetings, so we'll just see how it goes. So please come to the floor or provide us with a question you have.
I just have a couple questions here. Our kids have been going to the east and around Antigonish for years, and they have been successful at graduating. Why are we interrupting that progress now? Why did this come about?
I can't hear you.
We have a good support system with the school, with the spa, with the students, right? We have interagency. Why are we trying to block them out now and make our own community school? Okay. So our kids have been graduating from the schools, am I correct? Right? They have been for past decades. So why are we interrupting that progress and trying to make our own school? What is it going to benefit them, or is it going to benefit you as a group or the whole community? Like, I don't understand. We have a good support system with school boards. We have spa workers, right? We have all these kids graduating and doing good things. So why are we going to take them out, put them back in the community? What does it benefit them? Or who does it benefit here? Anybody?
Yeah, there was a study done roughly in 2011, and it had a bunch of, there was a few recommendations about creating our First Nations support worker. We had spas in place, coupled were to work with one-on-one. That was all developed from that study, and yes, there's an excellent success rate for graduates now. And why we're starting this is to, it's not as done as a group. It's not for anybody's benefit but the community, and that's why the feasible study's got to be done to know what you guys want, and we'll go from there. It's not, we're not saying yeah we're having a school or no. It's all up to the community, and that's why the chief and council wanted to start this procedure just because of the 5-year capital plan that MK has to negotiate for, and yes.
Okay.
If anybody wants to add on.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Back in the study that Tanya is referring to is a study that was done in, I think, 1996. And the reason for the call of that study was because back then, the delivery of education to our students was extremely poor. At that time, in a 10-year span, there was not one graduate. The dropout rate was extremely high, and the children that were dropping out were becoming a younger and younger age. Anyway, since then, yes, like there's been, like Daniel referred to, positions and supports in place since then. This, Cheyenne, is purely just to look at the idea of entertaining a school. For every, I'm not saying that what's not in the school now couldn't be something that could be offered within our own school. When you look at a feasibility study, it takes everything into consideration, and I mean everything. Right now, some of the schools, some may want to be looking at more curriculum involving our culture and language, and just different things that they'd like to see. Not
So
saying that they couldn't happen
maybe
in
we should
school
do
now.
more research on their graduate rates and how successful those schools are before we, you know what I mean? Another thing I wanted to ask is what is the current operating cost for school, for all school throughout the year, and how does it filter back into the community?
Say that one more time, sorry.
What is the current operating cost for our kids to go to school for 1 year? And if we were to do it here, how will it filter to our community?
Okay. I'm not aware of, and maybe somebody is aware of the existing operational costs for the present school at East Antigonish. That's what I think you're referring to. What I did ask MK about, and it has to be generally ballpark, because there is no school and there's a lot of projections here. But they gave me a rough estimate of roughly about $150,000 to $200,000 dealing with O&M,
So average per person, per student, do you think you have an idea of cost?
That's just a general guess, and we don't have a specific breakdown of that. The feasibility study would give us more clarity on what that would look like after they look at the population figures, the population growth, the size of the school that the community wants. All of that would inform what kind of O&M we're looking at. Now, getting back to your earlier question, and just a follow-up from that, is generally we're looking for people's ideas on, is a school in the community a better thing for us, or if it isn't. So it's part of the dialogue. Some of the things we heard from MK in terms of success rate, it seems that the communities that had a school, that developed a school within their community, the success rate did not decrease, the success rate increased. The other thing to mention is that can we do better? And some of you might quite frankly say no, we can't do better than the existing status quo. I mean, but at least, what this suggests is, can we do better as a community in terms of educating our youth? One of the things that was mentioned by people is this is not really an issue of a school being in a community, but rather us having a community school, right? Which is different from just having a school in a community. So the idea there is, how can the community sort of, is there an appetite within the community to sort of play a role in the development of programs, in the development of the school itself, in the development of the educational programming within the school, in the development of a host and a variety of different things. So these are sort of the things that we would have to think about as we move forward.
So this is new to me too today, what I'm reading and learning today. So how are you going to target the rest of the community when we only got a small portion here?
That's a very good point, and that's why this is videotaped. So at least we have a record of what people think. And the other thing to note, that this isn't the end-all and be-all of the subject, right? Really, the real work begins after this meeting, because part of the feasibility study, as I mentioned, you're going to have those focus groups, you're going to have those meetings just specifically on education, So hopefully, through dialogues like this and other dialogues that sort of exist through the process of planning through the feasibility study, more and more people will become aware essentially on what this issue is about, what are the good things about it, what are the bad things about it, and how can the community benefit from it.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I think this is a great opportunity for all the community in itself. We might be the smallest community, but I think where other bigger communities do have a school, and the success rate, when you look into the Mi'kmaq News, you see a lot of success there. I feel that if we do have a school, I think we should target maybe the lower grades from primary to 6. And that will alleviate some of the costs going into Sharon's program, Starling's program, and what we're paying into the school. We're paying big bucks for our children not being able to read and not being able to do math. And how long are we going to let the school dictate and push our children through the system? I think if we do have a school on the reserve, it should start small. The cost of operating it will alleviate some of the jobs that we're paying for people to go to the school, some of the resource programs that we're having to pay people, which are non-native, to teach our children outside of the classroom, not being able to read and go forward. I believe if we do have a school on the reserve, there will be parent involvement. There's going to be accessibility for us to be involved with our children. The numbers will be smaller, and our children will get the attention that they need. Because what now is going on now, we're paying thousands of dollars for our children to be transported to Tragedy, either to Antigonish also, and there is a need. We might have to pay over the operating costs that they give us a budget for, which we got a budget for everything else, social, education, you name it. But I believe that new adventures should be coming into the community, and we all got to look ahead instead of staying in the past. But thank you very much, and I think this is a great opportunity. It might be just my voice, but I believe the people that are not here today, the word of mouth does carry on from here. Thank you.
Thank you for that. And just to follow up to that too is within the design and planning features, and this was subject to part of the discussion with MK officials, there is the real and distinct possibility of rolling in or including the preschool and daycare within the conceptual designs of a school. And certainly the O&M of that can help offset the O&M of a general sort of bigger school. The other thing that typically comes with the development of an initiative like this is the prospect for employment for qualified teachers within the community, there is an employment element to that as well.
Yeah, and it's not just the teachers that we would be hiring. It would be our maintenance people that are maybe, possibly there would be a program for lunch program, breakfast program. See, we're paying a lot of money. I mean, if we think of it overall, we've been living under government, provincial, federal, DNA or Department of Indian Affairs for a long time. I think we should branch off on our own. And like I said, there is a great success teaching our own children our own culture, along with being able to target the reading and the mathematics that we all fail in. And we do have success rates with graduation outside of the reserve schools, but I think we would have a greater success being a part of our school, not just our children, but all of us. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just kind of want to make a couple comments here with Cheyenne's question when she's about the operation of the school. We pay tuition in back in 2011 when we joined MK, we stopped paying, the money stopped flowing to the band to pay the Strait Regional School Board. What it's done is I do nominal roll 3 times a year. Then I send that to Rena Forgeron. She works at the school board. She's in the finance department. And to MK, to Dave Peters, he's the data consultant. So it's roughly $7,450 that we pay for tuition. And if you see in what the budget we get now when it says elementary, secondary instructional band operated schools, we get $80,000 now. And you'll see that number there, that is for the preschool, the K-4 program. And if you look at the draft, if we did have a new school, it's 519,000. That would be and you'll see the number of 67. That's just a rough idea of how many students from P to 6, and that would be kind of like our operational costs there. And with Stephanie's comments about literacy and math, we do have programs in place at the school to help students individually. We hired MK hired a math allocation teacher. That was 2 years, year and a half ago. And what happened was one person started, then they took it, but they hired Ann McDonald. She's going to be continuing again this year. She works on a part-time basis, and she meets with the students individually, uses the program. It's called Leaps and Bounds. She gets very good resources from Bob Crane. He's the math consultant at Mi'kmaq. And breakfast program, there is things, Trina provides that, Trina Francis, and a lunch program. It's just little comments I just wanted to state to you guys, to let you know what is going on. But yeah, any more questions, feel free to come up. Thank you.
My name is Judy Julian. I think I like the process that we're going to do a survey and the whole rigmarole. I guess what I don't like is page 1, the steps for a new school. I don't like the fact that we do not have a choice. Now, if a student, a native student, it didn't matter who, went to any school and decided to go to school there, the public school system has every right to not turn them away. They don't turn them away. So, you're saying they cannot be pulled out, or all students that, it's like, hey, come on now. MK is taking our choice away as to whether our children can go on to res or in a public school system once this is in place. Say, for instance, we got a school on the res, and there were people that did not want their children to go, I don't understand that. I can't understand that. Budlodek already went through that trouble because I was on the school board at that time. And the school refuses to send them away because they're obligated to educate any students that come to their school. So why all of a sudden are we getting this with no choice?
I mean, you're right. I mean, one of the expectations from MK, and there are a number of communities that went through this in the development of their schools, where was sort of the situation where you have parents that didn't really buy into it. There were possibly perceptions that the level of education wasn't up to snuff. And consequently, what you have is them sending their children to schools off reserve and not to the school on reserve. And, that's one of the things that was put forward to us from MK, was that commitment from the community that this is our school.
I don't consider it a commitment when we're not given a choice. That is not a commitment.
Yeah.
The commitment is for parents to commit to want their children to go to school on the reserve or off the reserve. When we did that study in '86, I remember a counselor saying, my children want to get on the big school bus to go to school. That was their whole concept when they graduate from preschool. Now, I'm not saying that that is important, but I'm saying that they had a choice at that time, and they made that choice. They made the choice for their kids to go to the public school. I'm not saying that it's a good choice. I'm saying that it took years for us to get Mi'kmaq in there, and it's not even in there cohesively like I would like it to see it. I would like to see total immersion, and it's not there. Maybe that's something we can do on the First Nation community. I don't know. I just know that when you look around a First Nation community and you see success in entrepreneurship, on the way businesses are held, then you know you will have a good school. If those are not in place, you will not have a good school, if it's on the reserve. I'll tell you that. That's my feeling. That's all it is. I'm saying that maybe these surveys will say different. Thank you.
Thanks, Judy.
Yeah, just speak closer, Dolly.
If I could just refer back.
Closer.
If I could refer back to Judy's comments. Okay, I'll wait.
Well, okay, while we're working on technical issues here, one of the things I want to add, just in light of the comments that Judy had mentioned, is that when you're talking about operating a school and providing the services that is needed within the school, a lot of it, those services are dependent upon funding dollars. That is, those funds that are required to support staff, to administer programs, to just help with the overall operation and administration of the school. So in order to do that planning process, you would need to know what kind of funds you have and try to secure as much funds as you can secure to ensure that students have the level of education that they deserve. What we're talking about with the school typically is a situation where numbers are not as high comparable to numbers in provincial school systems. So there is typically a lower ratio between teacher to student ratio. A lot of people believe that formula speaks to an improved educational experience for those students. So as it relates to the issue of why, there has to be clarity on people going to and committed to going to the band school. A lot of it deals with hardcore funding issues and the provision of essential programs and services for those communities. Did you want to add something? Okay.
Judy was talking about from this page in the book. If we refuse to send our children to an on-reserve school, are we required to pay for our own children's education? And if we moved off reserve, would we be eligible for funding from the band so that our children can attend another school?
So you're asking, would there be educational services for our children that decide not to go to? Yes, there would be, because the province can't refuse. That will be there. But I think the whole point behind, whether it's going to be a viable direction to go as far as looking at our own community school is the viability about it. Is it something that the community wants to invest in? If that's a buy-in saying yes, then, it's going to take, all the students really, or a good portion of the students to make the school work.
And the reason why I ask, because in this article, Community Buy-in 1B, that no tuition will be paid to province for students in these grade levels. So what does that mean?
Is that referring to whether our
Yeah.
portion would pay to the school? No,
Yes.
it wouldn't, but the province does accommodate students, our students.
Okay.
It wouldn't be coming from the, from my understanding anyway, it wouldn't be coming from our budget.
So, okay. I have one more thing here. Is our child required to, oh yeah, no, I did that one. Bullying is a major issue here and it's even harder on off reserve. Bullying and racism and anything like that. Is this has something to do with this? Trying to leave the school, or should we keep them together and try to make them work together? Do you think that has a factor in this decision that you guys are making for the children?
Oh my God, I wish I heard it.
Did you catch the question? Because of my cold, you know, I mean, but did somebody catch that? Because I heard about racism and stuff like that, and just to comment, there have been studies, not just in, you know, Aboriginal communities, but Latino communities, you know, and other minority communities where they found that the incidence of racism within sort of community, sort of school settings decreases. And could you just mention your question one more time? Sorry about that.
So bullying and racism is a major issue here, and it will be harder on each other when they go off reserve to school. Okay. Are we encouraging it, or are we isolating them by making them have their own school here?
Okay, and thank you for that. So what I'm getting from your question is, are we overly protecting our children by almost segregating them from the typical school environment with non-natives? And is it the best thing for our children to shelter them from bullying and things like that? And, you know, that's a general question that obviously I like people to consider is the idea of having a school in a community being a step as being too overly protective with our children as it relates to bullying and things like that. And it's a point to consider for sure. I mean, I just want to say it's not the primary reason why we're having this dialogue. I mean, one of the main reasons for the dialogue is this idea or concept of can we do better in terms of education as a community? When you have the community engaged within the education of our youth, can better things happen just by our involvement, having the physical location within the school setting? You know, these are some of the main motivating things, but obviously your point is well taken, Cheyenne.
Okay, thank you. I got one more thing. Will the education level be general or academic level as it is at the East now, if we were to have our own school in the community?
Okay, and that was a point you mentioned about in terms of what level of education would be implemented.
Will it be like GED equivalent to grade 12, or will it be getting grade 12 like?
One of the things I want to be quite clear about is even having a school within the community, there's no way of getting around the requirements of the province in terms of what they have for education levels. So this isn't a sub-educational sort of education program we're talking about. So those basic levels of qualifications and academic achievement has to exist within our school. How we attain those levels, you know, is something that is completely up to us as a community. So I just want to mention that.
Thank you.
I just have kind of a question, or I need clarification on something. I understand that the province cannot refuse our children for education, but let's just say, if I were to choose to send my child, and I'm trying to grasp this, that they cannot refuse my child education, But at the same time, I'm to the understanding that the only way their tuition is paid is if you're living off reserve. So am I going to have to move off reserve to have my tuition paid for my child? Like, who really, at the end of the day, is going to pay my child's tuition? Should I choose not to send them to the school on the reserve?
In Waikagama, they have, I have to put this down, but in Waikagama, they have a school on reserve. And what's happening is a lot of the community members are sending their kids to the Waikagama Education Center. And it's because a lot of reasons, politics, it could be you're fighting with this teacher, whatever. And that was one of my fears when I first the idea was brought forth about the school, is how the politics are going to get in, how we're going to get the whole community to buy in it from P to 4, P to 3. We don't know where our intentions are with our school. But what I want to say is that I've been working at the school for 13 years, and it's been a slow progress, but it is getting better. I'm really up in the air how I feel about a school on reserve or off reserve. Like I said, I've been working in this field for 13 years, and I look at on reserve schools, and I just see the attention the kids get and how much cultural inclusiveness there is in the curriculum. And when we talk about, Cheyenne mentioned, well, the kids have their, general or whatever, it's not going to be about that. We're still going to follow the curriculum guidelines. You can't have a school without doing that. But what we'll be able to do, and something Carrie that said to me the other day in our meeting, was that we can still deliver these curriculum outcomes, but we get to say how we're going to deliver them. We could, take them out on our own, just add in more culture. And the more the kids get more culture, the more they're proud of themselves, the more they're prepared to go into a provincial school, and they feel a lot better about themselves. Not saying they don't feel that way now, but it's just, like I said, we're trying our best at the school level to incorporate culture and stuff. We don't have enough resources. The other worry I had about having a school on reserve was all this talk about our own source revenue. Right now, working with different communities and different schools, they struggle to provide different things. But they're a much bigger community than we are. We have special needs dollars in our community that we are using now to help students get through the provincial system. In these First Nation schools, they don't even have it. Some kids don't get to have their psych ed assessments done. They don't get to have speech and language. Things like that were worrying me about all this. But like I said, I think that if the community had a big involvement with this and we had more resources available to our community to help our kids feel more proud about themselves and see themselves in an everyday situation. The other worry I had about a non-reserve school, I mentioned, was the dollars. Well, I'm still on that, but the dollars, we won't get enough dollars to maintain a school every year. We'd have to fundraise, we'd have to find our own source, find ways to do that. But with the new highway coming in, we have a lot of available, it could happen because it's 3 to 7 years depending on when the highway comes through. And another thing I wanted to mention was the interactions between non-Mi'kmaq students and Mi'kmaq students. Like, there's competition there. I just still hope that there's still interaction, that we still can play teams, whatever it may be. But like I said, I'm up in the air. I wanted to mention too that on reserve schools, there's a lot of grade 12s graduating with the Elizabeth Governor General Awards. They're graduating with honors, and in our school, we're not there yet. We're graduating the kids. There's a lot of students, moving on to post-secondary and other different areas, but I wonder what it would be if we had a school on our reserve where we can focus more on our own kids, and we have that opportunity, so I just want to mention that.
So did anybody want to answer my question on who pays the tuition?
Well, I don't, I'm just thinking from what was said previously that the province is obliged to provide education to...
Yeah, they're obliged when you live off reserve.
But I don't think it's on reserve as well. So I haven't heard of a situation, but,
I'm sure other people out there are wondering the same thing. I'm just throwing it out there. My kids are going to be beyond that one by the time that rolls around, but
Yeah.
but it's a question that people are asking.
We sh-
It wasn't brought to our attention that you would have to be off reserve to access education.
Yeah.
I just always thought that's the way it was with provincial school systems.
Because right now on other reserves that have schools on their reserves, some
You guys need to talk in a mic.
parents choose to take their kids off reserve schools, and the province ends up picking up the tuition costs. But the transportation is the responsibility. I'm not.
Yeah.
I just had one more question before you ask Mike. You were stating that before, like OSR is going to cover a lot of the maintenance, you know, like heat and lights and that. Can OSR really afford to do that on a regular basis with such a big school?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly going to be a stress on OSR, own source revenue, and I mentioned the prospect of the daycare and the preschool sort of contributing to that. In the planning and development stages, you can cut down the costs of operation and maintenance. For example, within Member 2, their school is heated through the process by which thermal heating, where they pump the warm water up from the lower beneath the ground, and what we're looking at in that regard is free energy for them. So what they did through the design and planning features of that is they cut down a big cost related to their heating costs related to an O&M. So these are possibilities that could be considered by ourselves. The other thing I want to mention is that this dialogue about the standard of education and you know, it's my right to decide what is the best kind of education for my child. You know, a lot of these dialogues certainly exist within any community setting that has a school. And, you know, one of the things we talked about as a council in the future is inviting some of these people who had the experience in other communities, like Indian Brook or Member 2 or Waikagama, to sort of come here and share their views and perspectives on how things were initially in the beginning, what were the perceptions and thoughts, and how has things sort of progressed from there, you know. And so that's one of the things we're hoping to sort of expand upon in the future.
Hello. Hello. What we did, we had our own school one time. It's probably back in the Stone Age or whatever, but Jenny Forbes, I went through there to grade 3. I liked it. It was pretty good. But the problem was going to a white school. We fought every day. So I say we did it for our kids, We fought, we did it. Now our kids are getting along, If we go back to the old ways, we're going to be starting backwards again. For a simple fact, we did it, And we need our kids to be with the white people, because they're going to be eventually working with them. Here, we can't keep our kids knit together because I feel that we're going to get the same experience, Being pecked on, Being called native, Wagon burner. Because I suffered it, That's what I think, anyway.
Thank you for sharing with that. And just to sort of get into what you mentioned, Mike, is, you know, that experience of transition from Jenny Forbes, our own school, to going to the new school and the battles that ensued from that. And then the other thing you mentioned was, you know, is it really good for our children to be by themselves, let's just say, you know, when it eventually comes for them to integrate with other non-Mi'kmaq people, how will they fare out in that regard? Because inevitably they're going to be working with them in the outside world kind of thing. So certainly this whole dialogue is about hearing those views and perspectives and, you know, really taking those into consideration. Thank you.
I did like Trina and Judy's comment about our language. And when you sit back and think about it, you know, this big gym here is all full of our Aboriginal people. And is there a handful of people that really can speak fluently in Mi'kmaq? No. So my biggest question is, we've been fighting the government for social dollars to increase our welfare, education dollars, to have better living allowance, especially if you're going to Dell and SMU, you get a living allowance probably of what, $775, but you don't get no living allowance to live in an apartment. So the biggest thing to me is we have Treaty Day. This community doesn't really honor Treaty Day. There's no events, there's no nothing. But I think, you know, when you look at the overall picture and you say, okay, where is our language going? Our language is failing big time. None of us can speak it. Some of us can, which is very fortunate. And I think if we don't have a school on the reserve, we are going to lose the language completely. We try to bring elders in to speak the language. The show up to go for these classes are very small. So the biggest thing to me is let's have a look at it overall and say, do we want our culture? Do we want our language? Or are we going to have worries about what the change might bring if we don't have a school on the reserve, if we do? But I think the biggest thing is we all got to really look at the whole picture and say, our culture is dying. So school would be a better process. We all have worries about what's going to happen, our dollars, you know, and I've been saying this for a long time. Why isn't our welfare ever increased? Why? Because federal government is the only one that takes hold of our funding dollars. It never increases. So I'm just one person. I'm pretty sure we all have worries about what changes might come in the past, but if we keep not wanting the changes, we're never going to succeed in life. We're going to be back in the Stone Age. And whether there's racism here in the schools, after grade 6, if we do have a school in grade 6 here, it's all about living with society. Whether you're handicapped, whether you're an elder, whether you're a child, whether you're a youth or an adult, we all have racism. And we all grew up being called names, whether we were on reserve or off. So that's just my point of view. But I think the language is what's failing us all today, and our culture. And if you look at it today, we all show up at the powwow, but who does the actual traditional ways? Who goes to the sweats? Who goes to the community and the cultures and learning about what our ancestors lived through? Who goes through the history? Not one of us. But I think we all have to move forward. And that's the scary part of it all. But I think we're all doing a great job. And I do like to see welfare as big dollars, and welfare to increase. This $185 for one single person, the poverty line has just struck. And it's going to keep living the same pattern if we don't try and change it. Thank you.
Excuse me, before you leave, what was your question? Sorry.
My question was the language.
Language.
Well, we do have the languages in school. Unfortunately, it starts at grade 4.
No, but Judy said that she'd like to see the language in the school to be, what is it, Judy?
Immersion, she said.
Yeah, immersion, but I don't think the school is stopping us in general. It's the federal government that's stopping us. You know, like I say, like it's French and English and fluent in the whole country of Canada. And they're never going to make Mi'kmaq language a fluent language in our country. Never. If it would have been done, it would have been done a long time ago. At least we do have a Mi'kmaq class in the school, which we never had. But in reality, we have one class. If we have on reserve, we'll have all our culture. We'll have Treaty Day to be, honored by our children and to know what it is to do sweats, to do cultural history, to learn about our ancestors. It's stuff like that that we're kind of not looking at the whole picture. We're just looking at, what the cost is going to be here. And we might be a small reserve, but hey, when we get the big highways up and stuff like that, we might come into big dollars, we might not. You always got to take your chances. If we're always going to worry about the cost of everything, well, the cost of social is in a big debt. Our education might be in a big debt. We don't know it. All we know is the band office is in a big debt anyway, so why not jump to big money and to teach our children, not worry about the dollars.
But just to state, the previous chief and council did meet with the Strait Regional School Board at a meeting. It contained of the superintendent, Fred Rice. There was also the Mi'kmaq representative, Basil Johnson. I can't remember who else was sitting at this meeting, but we did stipulate in our meeting because it had to do with their strategic plan, their five-year strategic plan. And we did state in that meeting about our culture and language that it shouldn't start at a grade 4 level, start at primary. And with that being said, I'm going to have to follow up just to see what our recommendations were and what they are going to do for us. And thanks for reminding me.
So I just have a few questions again here. If we were to have a school in the community, are we limited in their options on courses for academic or any career choices that they might have a better chance at the East say than they would here?
No, it'll all come up during this feasible study. It's that document, the feasible document, must be about 2 inches thick, and it'll go under every nook and cranny of what you guys want. But we still have to follow provincial curriculum and stuff. We can, how do you say it?
Tweak it.
Huh?
Change it. We can add to it, tweak it.
Yeah, we can. Do what we want with it, but still follow the guidelines. Whether it could be culture, language, anything like that. You know what I mean? It's just. Yeah, there would be more like more not one-on-one, but the teacher-student ratio is what, 20 students for one teacher, stuff like that. It would be more, as you'll see in the nominal role, like say for instance, grade K5 primary. There's 10 students. There would be more one-on-one with each of our students.
Okay, I have one thing. If we're going to be having our own school, would it be community members running the school? Will we have outside teachers coming in? Because currently, right now, we do not have enough community members with any education background. Well, some we do. I'm not going to say all, but a lot to run a school. Do you know what I'm saying? So how are we going to be teaching our children? Will we have Mi'kmaq teachers here, just like they did in Shibby, where they were teaching at the same time and doing their masters? Or are we going to have real educated white teachers come in and deliver a curriculum here? Okay,
first of all, if we were to have a school, there won't be no politics involved at all. It would be based with like community members would help, like we would maybe make a school board or whatever. But like I mentioned before, everything will come up in this feasible study. And with the education now, there's opportunity for us to have a BED program here, Bachelor of Education. Currently, we have 11 students that are taking the BA program. Maybe not all of them want to join. We can cohort with other communities. That's they're presently doing one in Indian Brook right now, but but unfortunately with the CBU class, just they can't go into that. But St. Avex we have close by. CBU, you know, we have all these things that can deliver programs here. But like I said, everything will come out in a feasible study. If we have to hire like off reserve, then why not? But we have to give them some kind of like professional development on cultural sensitivity. All this stuff but like I said, everything will come up in that study and it's like 2 inches thick.
Okay, thank you. I also just want to get back to what Mike Prosper was saying about how we are pretty well going back to the old days. If we take our kids back out and then, they go to town or wherever, anything going to happen. Who are we at fault? Are we at fault or is it them? Are we isolating ourselves, going back to Indian residential days where we need to be just secluded on the res? Because this is what it kind of makes it sound like, that you want us to stay on the res, get an education for sure, but let's just be with us. That's what I get from all of this, that we're going back to Indian residential by making our own school. Any thoughts, anybody?
The sound is kind of rough, I must admit. I mean, but you're mentioning, if I understand you, that we're sort of going back to if we go back to our old ways, what was the other part of it?
If we're coming back to the reserve to work for school, right? We have no other contact with any other schools. We're doing it all here. So when our kids graduate and move on and they have to face them again, that's the same thing as going back to Indian residential. Back in the day when our kids, or when you guys were growing up, you guys know more better than anybody else.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things I think about, and that's a very valid point, is the less interaction and communication our Mi'kmaq children have with non-Mi'kmaq children, that in the end that might affect them, that might not improve their social skills, not give them confidence, things of that nature. Yeah. But one of the things I just want to add, that a lot of the stuff that relates to confidence, and success is self-esteem. And what a community school can do is it can take various components like culture, like language, like Aboriginal and treaty rights, and the list goes on, where we start educating our youth about who they are as Mi'kmaq people. Myself, I didn't hear anything about Mi'kmaq until I went to university, and that was a big disappointment, right? And so the idea here is, if we can instill our youth with their history, with their culture, to build self-esteem, will they be facing the challenges that we faced when we were young? Because this is a different time, this is a different place, and things happen. You have sports, for example, yes, where kids go out and they compete not only with other Mi'kmaq communities, but non-native people as well. So there are interactions that happen over and above school. Look at technology right now. The technology when we were young, it was nowhere compared to the technology today. The use of the internet and social media has expanded beyond measure. So it doesn't really matter if people are locked in a classroom on a reserve setting. It's through social media and all these other avenues that you can talk to anyone, anywhere in the world, right? So I think part of the challenge is to distinguish, how things were for us, and sort of placing that upon them and thinking that that's the way it's going to be for them.
But honestly, we have a great generation of kids that are into sports, that have graduating. You know what? I think we'd be taking a step back, 10 steps back if we make a school here. That's what I say anyway. And my kid is a graduate, and she never had the opportunities if she was on a school on a reserve, I think. From her going to the east and being well educated and had good guidance counselors and people to direct her is what we all need, even here in our community. So how can you promise that level of care to our children if we had it on the community?
Well, that's the big unknown, because as a council, we can't promise anything. The only thing
this is in elections, though. Yeah. This is in elections. This is our children's education.
Yeah. The only people that can really promise something for our youth is the community. okay? This is beyond politics, this is beyond organizations, this is all about the community, and does the community actually believe that we can do better? And if we feel that we can't do better, fine. We'll just drop it and maybe revisit it later. I mean, like, there's no pressing thing that says we have to do it now.
I think we all need to be more educated on each side, right? All right,
Certainly.
thank you.
Yeah.
I think I'd like to start off by saying, if we do, like, we know how bad things were 14 years ago before we did the study. They were atrocious. We had 10 years before we had any graduates. We got involved, and now we have years where we have 10 graduates in 1 year. And that's just doing tiny things like creating a position such as Trina's, putting more First Nation TA workers in the building, and then having them hire a Mi'kmaq teacher. And look at the progress that made. So if we were more involved and took more of a part of our children's education, I can only see it getting better than that. If we were to have a school here, the responsibility would fall on us as parents to make sure that Jenny Forbes that don't come here and work with our children. That's our responsibility as parents. So what I'm hoping to see come out of this meeting is for people not to make up their mind today, because we haven't even heard from other communities that have gone through this, where their money problems took them and anything else. I think it's just a matter of getting you to start thinking about how much more involved we should be in our children's education. Because if you think the provincial school is perfect, I can tell you, you are mistaken. It's not perfect. A school here will not be perfect. It'll be what we make it. I think we're thinking too small. We're concerned that we're not going to meet the standards of the provincial system. And in the meetings that we've been sitting in over the past couple of weeks, what we're being told is we're thinking too small. We have an opportunity of a private school setting here. That's huge. That's really big, a private school. We have control over who comes in and educates our children. We have control of the programs that are being delivered here, and we control how academic or non-academic we're going to be. That's the important part of it, is the investment you put in to your children's education. Not chief and council, not the school board, but you as the parents, as your students' advocates. You need to speak for your children. So this is the time to get the information so you can make an informed decision on whether or not we should be in a school or not. You know, I worry about not having dollars for support programs as speech and language and extra reading, but if we are in a private school setting, maybe we can put ourselves in a position where we don't need those extra supports. We can have teachers here who can have the small numbers, educate our children the way they need to be, so that those supports are no longer needed.
Just some people are too shy to come up here. But we were discussing around the table, and someone had brought up that we do have a lot of successful graduates, but how many of our graduates are going forward and succeeding? That's one of the biggest questions. We also feel that within the provincial school system that we have in Tragedy, how many of our children are going through the foundation level? We don't want foundation here if we have a school on reserve. We want an academic. We want our children to succeed, whatever they do after graduation. That's the question that we would like to see. We feel strongly that academic is the way to go, and the only reason why I say that is I had a nephew that wanted to be an engineer. And of course, Tragedy School have all these courses, foundation level. When he graduated, there was no engineer. He failed the system. The system failed him. And today, we have our children, some of the graduates, as we call them, still living on reserve. And that's the saddest part of it all. We have to look at the whole picture, like I keep saying over and over again, that foundation is not what we want. And I think academic is what we all should gear to. Tanya did say they did offer a BA program, the CBU. There are some of us that are graduating. All of us will be graduating next year. And Tanya did say to us, there is a Bachelor of Education they are going to offer for our community members to become teachers. It's all up to the community themselves, the individual, but there is an opportunity for us having Aboriginal teachers, instead of talking about it and saying, oh, we don't have the Aboriginal teachers that we're looking for, do something about it. Educate yourself. That's the biggest part of it all. Educating yourself, whether it's education, being a teacher, whether it's being an engineer, whether it's being a bus driver, we all have to succeed. And I tell you one thing, the provincial federal government has not let us do that yet. And if we keep falling under the system of following the federal government, we'll be right here, sitting here next 5 years, wondering why we don't have a school. Thank you.
Okay, we're getting on to 12. We do have some great food there, and so maybe we'll just wind this section off of the community meeting. I'm looking at the artists over there, really capturing what we're talking about in a very artistic way, so I'm sort of looking forward to looking at that. So what we'll do is we'll just close this end of the discussion off, and I'll give Tanya an opportunity to provide some closing remarks. So over to you, Tanya.
Go a little bit over what Stephanie was mentioning about how the students, their success at grade 12 level, and then for them to move on. We, like myself, Trina, we push and talk to these kids of what they want to do and stuff, and help with the application process. But just to state a little, I just want to include this, is we do our job and try to get these graduates to further education of what they want to do and stuff. But we also need parents to give their kids a little push as well, because some of them don't have that at home. So just, we can only do so much. So please, parents, give your kids an extra push. Start out at an early age of what they want to do and stuff with their math. Maybe certain individuals want to do whatever. They need to know early to know what sciences they have to take, the math they have to take. Yeah, you can't get in an engineering program with a foundations math. You need your honors, and you got to start that early. And we're fortunate enough to have Ann there to do this math, because not only we feel that we're losing our math and sciences, but MK did as well. And they're providing us dollars to help our young students at an early age with their math. So maybe we'll have 10 engineers here in 20 years' time. We don't know. But yeah.
Okay, just before we close, and thank you for that, Tanya, there is a question, and somebody asked, how about when non-native children, can they attend the school if we have one on reserve? And we discussed that as a possibility, because obviously if we're developing an educational program that, yes, meets provincial requirements, but is more receptive to our own culture and traditions and language and things like that, what is the situation when you do get a family off reserve who is non-Mi'kmaq wanting to bring their children to the school? And we discussed that as a possibility, and there is a possibility there if for additional sort of revenues to flow within the school, just based on the idea that non-native children attending would just through their tuition that the province would provide in that regard. So that is something that we just briefly talked with MK about as well. Rose, did you have a...
I just want to add, has nothing to do with education. I think it's a great idea. Of course, the community is the only one that can help us move this initiative. All I want to say before PJ break to everybody for lunch is that we have Corey and Jean over here capturing all of today's event. If there's anything that you didn't get a chance to say or come up to say to the panel, please go see Corey and Jean, and so they can add all the community input onto the board. So we have that in our report as well. Thank you.
So with that, I will close the discussion on this, and thank you all for sharing your views on this very important issue of a school within our community.